Thanks for being here. It was here where everything started in Sintra, I remember. And
you were a young man.
And you as well.
No, not really.
And this is a film that I don't know if in the days of now you could do it, because when Wim started, and we will talk about that, there was not a line of script. It was just every day he was inventing what he wanted to shoot. What do you think? You could do something like that now?
It'd be pretty impossible today to try to... Do you understand this?
Yeah.
Yes, good. It would be pretty impossible today to make a film completely without a script. We had no script at all. We started with this film crew, stranded, without money. We started with a producer who had no money.
I was already bankrupt at that time.
But we wanted to make a film, and that's the most important. We just wanted to make a film about that strange situation that cinema was in the early 80s. It was in a hole. The whole world of cinema was stuck like this film crew. Film was in a hole, and I wanted to make a situation about that. And I had just survived my first film in Hollywood, barely, and I wanted to make a film about what this incredible world of European cinema versus this unbelievable world of American cinema, and you could only do this like a poem. You could only do it by inventing it from every day, from day to day. We shot this film in complete chronological order because we never knew what we were going to shoot the next day. So we had to shoot it in chronological order, and Paolo was very brave, and he continued believing in it. And that makes you quite a special guy. No. Because you do believe in movies that nobody else believes in.
But the cinema is that. You have to, it's a kind of, you have to believe in everything, in the image, in what you are shooting, everything. But it's something...
Look how big this theater is. Look how big this is.
Yeah.
Who comes, when is it full here?
It was 2 days ago.
Joker or what?
With Willem Dafoe
and with Willem.
And Lighthouse.
Ah, very nice.
Yeah. But it's a film we're showing very often in Portugal. We do it here because it's really a tribute to your staying here with us. And because remember these incredible past times, I think today we have to reinvent other ones. You cannot say that only, it was, that things were possible like that in that time. Now other things are possible as well. And what is incredible that how we do it, we learn a lot with you here, because it's not there is no many people that can start, directors that can start a film, just having one idea and after that going with the film, with the actors, because some of the actors were already here for another film, for The Territory, and you adapt yourself to all these situations, not knowing, it's easy for, I think it's much easier for a producer than for a director to be, in a kind of risk. For you, it was even more risky, because at the same time you were doing Ahmet, I think. We were stuck with Ahmet, and you could be, everything could be ended before we finish shooting, you know that.
Yeah, that was the beauty of the situation, that it was such an existential situation for this film crew and this strange hotel in Praia Grande, and it was on the edge of Europe, and it was like the most western point of Europe, and then there was only America on the other side, it was such a metaphor, and it was all broken down, and it all needed to be reinvented. I loved the situation. I loved living in Sintra at the time, and I loved every day I stayed here. Who of you was only born afterwards? We shot the film in January, February, March, 81. Who of you wasn't born yet? You
Oh my God.
And it's an amazing time travel, right? It's an amazing time travel.
And the film is here. I have 2 members of the crew of that time. More? Yes.
Who's here?
Who is here? There are about 5 people here. Of the Zay, Mario.
Where's Zay? Hey, there she is.
Yes.
Zay, come on up here. Come on with us. No.
Maria is here as well.
Maria, hey. You see, Zay was a miracle worker. The film starts, you remember, it starts with a science fiction film. And how do you make costumes for a science fiction film if you have no money whatsoever? So she made it with...
She started to get used at that moment, after, I think, all this life.
We bought these strange sunglasses, these cheap sunglasses, and you put stripes over them, and then we had these white ribbons. We had nothing. Science fiction was making films with nothing. Hey, Zay. Who else is here from the school? Who else is here from the crew? Zay and Maria? Wow.
Maria? And who else? Huh?
Which money?
The town was here.
Wow.
But the film, what is incredible that the film resists more than us. He's still here, alive, young, and I think the people that I don't know, we are going to ask, but I think someone of, that was not born at that period, I think he gets incredible sensation seeing the movie today. That's why I hope. That's why they are here with us, and that's something.
Yeah, it's a historical document more than anything today.
No, it's more than an historical document.
Well, but it's also a historical monument. And I was amazed to see that Isetta again. You used the image of the little German car on your poster.
It was an idea I had, this year, Lisbon Sintra, I remember arrive at the office and say, I know already what is the thing. Something that in your films there is something that sometimes reflects one against the other, and for you Portugal is Isetta. Is a small car.
A small, useless German car. Does any of you have a question for us? Otherwise we continue talking. Otherwise, except maybe some of you, especially those who are only born after the movie. Yes.
Let's go.
Good evening, Mr. Wenders. Allow me to ask 2 questions. Do you have any favorite Portuguese author? Writer, I mean.
The second question?
That's good enough, because the movie that we're showing tomorrow, Lisbon Story, deals with my favorite Portuguese writer, Pessoa.
Fernando Pessoa.
And I think I read everything he ever wrote. Actually, for me, he's one of the great writers of the 20th century, maybe even the most archetypal writer of the 20th century. And I understand his writing better than I understand writings of German people. This Pessoa guy for me is like the symbol of the 20th century. There's something in him that I see, like he lived a life for all of us, and he lived all our ideas, and he lived all our fears, and that's why I made him appear in the film. He appears 3 times in the movie Lisbon Story Tomorrow. You see a little guy with a hat appear like a ghost 3 times, and that's Fernando Pessoa.
I have to say I liked that, if I understood well, that reference to when that female character there was a male character was staring at the sea and said, here where the land ends and the sea begins. I like that reference. And now allow me to ask a second question. Since this movie ended with this struggle that we are feeling currently as well, this struggle between the blockbuster, which in the 80s was growing, right? And the struggle between the blockbuster cinema and the more reflexive cinema, which has something else to say. I mean, do you have seen what Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola are saying about Marvel movies, for example? I mean, they are saying that Marvel movies aren't cinema because they have no emotional or psychological themes and experiences. So I would like to hear it from you.
Yes, I really can relate to your question, because I also feel that the cinema that I grew up with and that I loved and that I cherished was one that was deeply driven by experience and by the idea that movies were related to our lives and were somehow inspiring reality and were inspired by reality. And then more and more, but it has always been like this. Since the beginning of movies, there's been these films that had nothing to do with our lives. They were just a counter image of our lives. From the beginning, Méliès went to the moon already in the 2nd year of the history of cinema. So there's always been blockbusters, always. It's always been the other side of movies. And I don't know, I do see a lot of these Marvel films as well, by sheer curiosity, because I try to understand what is their attraction and why people are no longer interested in films that deal with our own experiences and with the lives, the difficult lives that we're leading in the 21st century. And I saw Joker the other day, because it is sort of a Marvel film.
It is good.
But it is the first hour of it. The first hour is us. The first hour is a very precise, beautifully filmed and beautifully acted film about a neurosis, a man who gets driven out of society. It's a very exact and beautifully filmed story. And then after 1 hour, the film sort of gets, the film is, it's like a train on a track. And it's a beautiful track, and it's filmed beautifully, and you realize people in the audience get a little nervous because nothing is happening. It's just an observation. And it's a meaningful observation. And after 1 hour, the film derails. It jumps off its rails and it becomes sheer fantasy. And in the film, you realize the opposition of 2 kinds of filmmakings. It's very strange. The film shows exactly the 2 opposite forces of filmmaking in one film. The second half is stupid. The second half is completely ridiculous, I felt. But the first half was beautifully and moving and existential. And in one film I saw a huge metaphor for what cinema is. It's both sides, always been. And not many people dared to do it in one, so I was quite impressed by the film because it showed the schizophrenic situation of movies being two very opposite things, and it showed it in one film.
I want to know if you can tell me about how it was to working with the lovely actor Harry Dean Stanton. He's no longer with us, unfortunately. And how it was about working with him, because I already have seen this movie a lot of times, and I wasn't born in '80s, so. But it's, I think it's my favorite film of yours because so many reasons for me. It's a wonderful film, and the question was how it was to work with that actor and how it was to about the creation of that family with the kid and the actress with Natasha Kinski, how it was the whole process, because I am very curious. And the other questions.
Let me answer that first.
Okay, sorry.
Let me answer that first, because otherwise I forget. Did you see the film that Harry Dean Stanton did at the end of his life, Lucky?
No, I haven't seen yet, but I would love to.
It's a documentary that somebody made in the last year of his life, and they just watched him, how he spent his day in his house. And it's an amazing film because you don't really think you're watching a documentary. You think you're watching a character. I think you really watch. You think you're really watching somebody perform. But he wasn't performing. He was just being himself. And that was part of what made Paris, Texas sort of a special film, because Harry Dean was not a movie star. Harry Dean, at the time when I found him, had made about 100 movies already, but always all of them as side characters. I had seen Harry Dean in lots of westerns and strange movies, and Alien. In Alien, he was the first guy who was killed by this monster. After 10 minutes, he's already dead. And that's the best 10 minutes in the film until he's dead. And I liked him because he was always touching. And I always felt there was so much truth about his characters, even in Peckinpah westerns and in all obscure films that I didn't like at all. But I always liked this man because there was something so truthful and so giving in him. And then I was lucky that I met him when we were trying to get Paris, Texas off the ground. And I met him and I realized this was the man. He was the character. He wasn't going to play the character, he was that character. And only later, when we became friends and when we had made the film, Harry explained to me that that was the story of his life. He had a little son that he had never seen again for the rest of his life. And he said, I played the character knowing it was me. And Harry was extremely giving and had extremely little self-confidence because he had always been these side characters and he'd never played a leading character. And every day of the film, in the morning, Harry didn't know what to do. Harry was desperate. Harry came and didn't want to leave his wardrobe. He said, I can't do this, Wim. Look at Nastasia, how beautiful she is. Look at this beautiful woman. How is anybody ever going to believe that I was her husband? Look at me. I'm old and nasty, and I'm nobody, and I'm ugly. And I always had to hold his hand for an hour and tell him how good he was and how believable he was, until he dared to even go to the set and be that character. And Harry never ever had the courage to really confidently be that man. And even when the film was finished, and we said, Harry, we got invited to Cannes, you have to come. Harry said, I can't go to Cannes. I mean, I'm nobody. And they're going to hate me in the film. I can't go, Wim, but please go with the movie and go with Nastasia and everybody, but don't take me. I said, Harry, you're the leading character. You have to come. And maybe find yourself a friend, find somebody who you like and take that person along, so you have always somebody who can help you. And then Harry said, okay, I know somebody. It's a young actor, he likes me. And Harry brought that young actor with him, and he was his assistant while we were in Cannes. And he was doing the same job that I did during the shoot. He was telling Harry every day in the morning, Harry, you're good. You're very good in this film. Believe in yourself. And that actor was Sean Penn. Nobody knew him. He was just at the beginning of his career, and he loved Harry. And he did something really, really generous. He gave himself for 2 weeks to hold Harry's hand and to tell Harry, Harry, you're good. And only after Cannes, Harry believed he was good. And that was a disaster, because he then thought he should never ever play these side characters anymore. He should now only play leading characters, romantic characters. And then for 10 years, he didn't work. It was a disaster. Harry, nobody hired him again to play something like Paris, Texas.
I think he's the best film that he made for me.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think
you have
that
to
says everything.
You have to see Lucky.
We show it here 2 years ago.
Okay.
Oh, when it was a beautiful
sorry,
film.
it's
2 years ago.
And the other question is how it was to work with another giant, Bruno Ganz, in your other film, Der Himmel über Berlin.
Bruno was a great hero in German theater. He was the greatest theater actor of his generation. Bruno was playing in every part at the Schaubühne in Berlin, and he was the great theater hero. And he made his first film with me, American Friend. That was the first time Bruno played a film actor. And he liked the job of a film actor, but he still continued being a theater actor. And when I did Wings of Desire, Der Himmel über Berlin, with him, I knew that these characters were very, very difficult to play. It's impossible to play a guardian angel. It's truly impossible for an actor, because I realized very soon in the course of the film, as a director, you cannot help your actor. You cannot give him any directions, because who knows how an angel is going to react? Who knows anything about angels? They don't have an unhappy childhood. They don't have a father and mother. They don't have a biography. Actors love biographies. Actors like to dig into a character and to know everything about that character, and then they play it from that character. And Bruno, I couldn't give him a single idea what an angel is. I said, the only thing I knew was angels must be very loving, and angels must like us. So the only thing I told Bruno, believe in that love, that the way you look at people, that is everything I want from you, that you put all the love you have into everything you see. And that Bruno took very seriously, and he did this with an unbelievable abandon. He put all the love he had into each moment of the film and each scene he had with any of the other actors or with the people he met. He put his entire love for mankind into each shot that he did in the film. And only very, very, very good actors are able to invest so much into just the way they look at somebody.
Hello, Mr. Wenders. My name is Anastasia.
Where are you?
I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better. Hello, thank you for your film, and thank you, Lisbon and Sintra Film Festival, to that opportunity to ask questions. I don't really have a question. I want to ask for advice. I'm a young director and a producer. I graduated from the London Film School, and we're doing a film in January here. And we start with a crew, everyone from the London Film School. So my question is, what would you advise for the young producers and directors who are doing it's a proof of concept for the feature film, actually. So what would you advise? Maybe, I don't know, I can share with you and maybe have your advice by email, or I don't know. Or maybe you can also, yeah, I know it's very brave, but that's what a producer should do.
Are you the director or the producer?
I'm a director and a producer, but of that film, I'm a producer. And the director is from the London Film School as well. The DOP is from the National Film and Television School, but he's Portuguese. And we have the very interesting story. And it's because in Portugal, there is a way to Fatima. A lot of people go by foot to Fatima to overcome some crisis, something. So we inspired by that story, and the lead actress of the film, she had a tragedy 3 years ago. Her mother died of cancer, so this was the inspiration for the film. So it's all about the depression and cancer, but it's based here because it's very, very beautiful. And I think how it's the difference between what she feels inside and all this beauty. So I think this could be very interesting. Thank you very much.
Don't say that. Don't say it could be very interesting. Don't say that.
Okay.
Don't think like that. You have an unbelievable chance. You and your DOP, who is from here, and your director, you have the most unbelievable chance to do something that is necessary and unique and that nobody else can do but you and your team. And that is the only thing you have to know. Nobody else can do it. You are the only ones who can really bring this to fruition and make it blossom. And it's not that it could be good. Forget about that. It's not about how it's going to be received. It's about what you invest and that you have the unique chance to do something that nobody else can do but you guys. And that's the only thing you need to know. Nobody can do it. And if you feel somebody else can do it, then don't do it. But you have to know that you and your little crew have the chance in your lifetime to do something unique, and then you will succeed. I promise you, you have that in you. Does somebody want to have a glass of water? Zay?
I also want to thank you for the amazing films you've made over your career. You mentioned that you had no script for this movie, and yet it's a beautiful story. And it has an amazing cast of basically English-speaking actors. So my question is, when you set out to make this movie, what was there more than just the idea, and did you already have all these actors cast when you first started shooting?
Paulo was referring to it in the beginning, but of course you cannot possibly know it. I came here a couple of weeks, maybe a month or 2 months earlier.
3 weeks before.
3 weeks earlier, I came to Lisbon. I came to Sintra because a friend of mine, a French actress, Isabelle Weingarten, she also is in the film, was making a film with Raúl Ruiz, produced by Paulo. They're making a film called Territory. It was shot in the forests and around Sintra. And Isabelle wrote to me, we just had to interrupt shooting because we have no more film. And we have no more money, and we're stuck. And I was in New York, and in my refrigerator I had 3 big reels of 400 foot of color negative, and it was very good film, and you could shoot on it for 2 or 3 days, or maybe even longer if you were careful with it. So I packed my 3 rolls of film, and I flew to Lisbon on the way back to Berlin, and I brought the film to the film crew so that they could go on shooting. And they continued to shoot for 1 week. And I stayed there for a little while because I visited Isabel, and I watched them shoot, and I watched Raúl Ruiz shoot with his little crew, and all the actors in the film were his actors. All of them, except I brought the director because he needed to be cast, and the cameraman. So Patrick Bouchou and Sam Fuller were new.
In Viva.
And Viva, the script girl. All the actors were the actors of Paulo's film, and they really played their own situation, that they were lost and stuck in this funny hotel and the beach. That's the way I had found them, and that was the beginning of my film. So when I came and watched them shoot, and I really loved the atmosphere, and I really loved Raúl, how he dealt with his actors, and I really loved the old cameraman, Henri Alecron,
Yeah,
who was
is that
working
the
with them.
point?
And it was paradise. I watched there, and I stayed for a week and watched them shoot, and I just loved it. And then I had to leave, and I said, when you're finished here, guys, don't walk away. When you're finished, I come and I make a film about your situation. So just all stay, finish the film with Raúl, and then we make another film. Just all of you. All of you. Nobody leaves. We make a movie. And we make a movie about the situation that I saw you in when I came. And that's what we did. We started the film with a film crew, shooting a film and getting lost and stranded.
And you were in the same situation because you shot all the stock of black and white film that you could find all over the world.
Yeah, we also got stranded. I mean, we lived the same situation, but basically I used the actors and everybody. It was a found location, and it was a found film crew, and I just brought the fictional parts of the cameraman, Samuel Fuller, and Patrick Bouchot played the director, and Viva played the script girl. And then we invented it.
There were 2 or 3 people of the crew were doing at the same time Francisco of Oliveira. And
yes.
we brought them to the film. Zé, Jean-Paul Miguel, and 2 or 3 people. We put all the 2 crews directly. Huh? Huh? All the crew?
26.
26 people.
26, yeah. Between both crews. With Raúl was shorter, and we have the... and I used as well all the... Oliveira at that time shoot very long shots. And when an actor, didn't say the right word in the beginning of the middle of the shot, we had to repeat. That I have a lot of material as well that I could not use because he really wanted to shoot all the, at that time was 4 minutes, It was 120 meters of shoot. And if you done a lot of, I was kind of between Lisbon and Sintra, a lot, you know, there was always the rest of the film stock of Oliveira coming to finish the shooting. That the film, a territory was made like that. And Wim, when it arrived, he said me, I want to do a film like this, with all this, and I say, why not ask the crew? And you don't, you know, at that time, Wim was already for very, you know, cult directing in the sense that the young people really love his movies, his first movies. Not it was, you know, for us, an incredible gift to have Wim here between us, and an enormous energy. We learned something, an incredible energy that you gave us in this shooting. We were working sometimes 20 hours a day, but we wanted to shoot.
Our longest shoot was 48 hours without stopping. Yes. It was always half of the crew was sleeping and the
Yes.
other half was working. And Henri Alecon had to go to sleep, then the camera assistant became the cameraman. And when he was tired, Henri woke up and took over. We shot for 48 hours without stopping.
Yeah, because you have to,
I was the only one who was awake all the time.
and I was, because Wim had, you know, Henri had to leave, and Wim as well, we had to, you know, we have to do it in, we shot 5 weeks, I think, and no stop, and even I was boom in a moment, because the boom was sleeping, things like that. It was a crazy move. Anyway, a lot of fun. Exactly.
We also had the most beautiful place because this hotel by the beach was such a fantastic place to shoot. This was, the Praia Grande was such a present, and the whole film started with that image.
He's going there tomorrow.
My favorite films of yours were documentaries. You made such an emotional films about Ibrahim Ferrer, Compai Segundo, and so on in Buena Vista, about the extraordinary choreographer Pina Bosch, or the Brazilian photographer Sebastião Salgado. And now, what's next? What's next biography, documentary that you will make?
I started to like documentaries so much better because, as Paulo said in the beginning, nobody would let me today make a film where I can invent every day. But in a documentary, you can still do that. A documentary, nobody wants you to show a script. Nobody wants you wants to know what you shoot the next day. So, and the borders between documentary and fiction are so fluid anyway. So I prefer documentaries now. But if you look at my movies, like the one you saw now, State of Thing, really truly is a documentary. There's not much fiction in there. Well, a little at the end. Okay, yes. They get shot. Yeah, okay. That is fiction. But we shot it like it was a documentary. And sometimes you shoot a documentary like Buena Vista Social Club. I thought I was making a documentary. I thought I was making a music documentary. And we shot in Havana, and we shot in Amsterdam, and we shot in New York, and at the Carnegie Hall. And then I went back to my editing room and I started to put it all together. And I realized it wasn't a documentary. It was a fairy tale. We had started this film, and these people, Ibrahim had still be shining shoes. And at the end, in Carnegie Hall, they were the Beatles. That was a fairy tale. And I had thought I had made a documentary, and you still might think it is a documentary, but it's really also a fairy tale. So between documentaries and fiction, the limits are fluid. So now I prefer to do documentaries, and because there's a lot of fiction in them sometimes. Like in The Salt of the Earth with Sebastião Salgado, I thought I was making a documentary on a photographer until I realized he had another life and he was planting trees and he invented how to replant the rainforest. Come on, that is fiction. That is science fiction. So, I love documentaries because they give you a lot of freedom and they allow you to make films that really are about today, more than fiction.
The film is indeed a time capsule for someone like me who was born after the year of release. And you do seem to capture pretty well, amazingly in my opinion, atmosphere and places specifically. And that's where I would like to focus my question. To be perfectly honest, I haven't seen all of your films, but the ones I have seen, I enjoyed them all, I love them. And even when you do have a specific plot line, for instance, in the film The American Friend, there seems to be a recurring motif of, throughout the whole film, it starts to drift apart from the plot, and it starts focusing more on atmosphere and feelings and characters as human beings. And this film is no exception. My question would be, as an artist, before being a filmmaker, as an artist like you are, when do you know when you should wrap things up? Besides time constraints and budget constraints, for instance, in this film, when do you feel like you have reached that feeling which we're going after, and you know when to finish it all? Thank you very much.
It's very easy to start a film. That is almost natural. And you can start a lot of films in a lot of situations that you experience and that you know. I'm also a photographer, for instance, and a lot of my photographs, I think this could be the first shot of a story. And I could, from tomorrow on, continue that story. The difficulty is not how to begin a story, the difficulty is where does it lead to, and when can you possibly leave it alone and say, okay, this is where it ends, and this is when I cannot continue. In this film here, the state of things, with the director leaving his film crew behind and going to the other side of the world, to Hollywood, into this no man's land, and finding this producer who was driving in this mobile home, who was completely lost and probably knew he was not going to survive this somehow. And it was a very strange, fictional, mythical situation that unites these two men. And I knew this had to be the end of the film. There was no use for the director to go back to his crew, and there was no use to show that they would continue the film. And somehow, when he found him, I knew we had reached the end. And then I was curious what would happen between the two of them. And I tried to invent everything that a producer and a director could say to each other. And in the end, I felt I had a lot of sympathy for the producer, and I had a lot of sympathy, obviously, professionally, for the director, but I also felt they're both so much in a dead end, and I realized the only way to end this movie was that I got rid of both of them. And so I came up one night with the idea that they would both get shot, and I was so relieved because I knew, well, then you have an end. There's no use to continue afterwards. Because finding an ending is a disaster sometimes. It's so difficult, especially if you shoot in chronological order and if you don't really know where your film is taking you, but you try to find out what is the purpose of the film and where can it possibly lead to. So the film itself is an adventure. And I really, really need to feel that I am on an adventure with my crew, and if it's all already finished before you started, and if it's all written, and if it's all sort of a formula, I feel it's ridiculous. It's no use for any artist to be involved in a machinery that produces something that is already prefabricated. Then I should rather go and design cars. But I'm not designing cars, I'm making movies, and they are something very much alive. So in that particular case, I was happy that I found an abrupt end for both of them. And I still felt that the idea of cinema was very much alive at the end, and that their death and their dialogue about love and death was really getting to the core of what movies are all about, and that movies were going to survive this film. And that this crew waiting in Portugal were going to survive these two guys. And I made this film out of a big depression. This state of things was for me a deep hole I was in myself, because I had made a film in Hollywood and I was very desperate, and I thought that there's no way to live and there's no way to make movies. And then I found this film crew, Raul Ruiz, doing The Territory, and I felt that was such a hopeful thing. Even if they had no money, even if they didn't know how to go on, that was what I believed in, that kind of filmmaking. So I thought that kind of, even if the film is about, in a strange way, about the death of cinema, the little story that is in there proved that cinema was going to be very much alive. So for both of them to die at the end, for me, was movies were going to be like phoenix out of the ashes again. So even if you might think it is a depressing ending, I thought it was a very powerful, forceful way to begin something from scratch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.